You want me to look back, down the barrel?
Take four. So we're here in London A studio talking a little bit about how we got here.
It's been a long journey getting to the end of this album. I think since 2018 we've sort of had a gap, so yeah, been a while.
Let's have a group cuddle.
The album gives you a kind of playground to do something you can't do with singles, to tell a story. And yeah, it was just really important as a band to get that next album out.
For me, it was a case of really committing to above and beyond being vibrant and alive in its most vital form.
It actually started to feel like we really should do this, even if it's hard. Really, I've spent the last 6 years coming back. During the writing of the last album, I had a burnout, and I really felt like I didn't really even imagine myself ever making dance music again. It was a time in my life where I had to sort of prioritize just getting better. It wasn't even a choice. I felt like I was doing what I'm supposed to, but I wasn't necessarily really feeling it. And then actually continuing like that is a really difficult situation, particularly if things are going well. You end up feeling like a little imposter almost, like people are loving what you're doing, but if you're not loving it yourself, that can be a really difficult situation. This led to like, a couple of years of almost like re-evaluating everything in my life. Huge personal changes, because I felt really abandoned, lonely. I had a couple of years of depression, and in this time I really couldn't handle dance music. Felt like if I could live the rest of my life without hearing a build-up ever again, I'd be happy. So then I turned into writing music to feel a feeling of comfort and safety. So that's how I wrote Flow State.
I can empathise with Paavo in terms of falling out of love with dance music. It was a challenging time, that.
Around 2020, when I really had what I considered a near-death experience with COVID, I went to the Finnish forest to heal. I grew up in nature. It goes really deep down for me, that connection with nature. And I felt like I'd lost that connection. When I think about being in nature, there's probably very few situations you could be in than sailing. It made me realize that I might not be around forever. And if I've always dreamed of sailing, what am I waiting for?
There was quite a long period between us being in a room making music with Paavo and it happening again. I think it took us a while to sort of wrestle to a new understanding of how we could work together. Bubbled up in a number of songs that I was writing. One that's ended up on the album was called Sailing Off the End of the World, which was a combination of how I felt Paavo might be thinking or feeling, and a combination of how I was feeling at the time, in terms of the trauma that had been triggered in me and my reaction to what Paavo was doing and me trying to make sense of it. If it isn't Richard Bedford, how the devil are you?
I make decisions at night, lying awake in the dark. I could be...
It's a very sad tale. The character is off on his own and unreachable, but I think it's still very relatable.
With me.
And I think you've managed to give it this beautiful humility and loneliness.
Lyrically, it feels really visual. And it was also one of those where, as soon as I heard it, I wanted to sing it.
Sailing off the end of the world.
I went through a bit of a dip mentally, and I think the song was written at that time. So it's a conglomeration of a reflection on what it means to be in a band with somebody who lives on a boat, and what it feels like to be that person, what it feels like to be a DJ in a band, in a job that is very isolating. That is it, done.
Oh, was that good?
The first part of COVID was really tricky. The world kind of stopped. In the end, I guess the answer was to start the solo project that I did with Darren. That was a great process because we were writing our own songs. It was just what I needed during COVID, really, to sort of have that freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. That's the thing with being in a band. Jono was just sort of a project from the heart without any kind of external meddling, and that's kind of fun, really.
What happened was that Jono was working with Darren and decided to do the Joda album, and then Paavo did the POS album. So I thought it was a great opportunity to put out this album that I was working on before Above and Beyond came along. Lockdown for me enabled me to do some things that I hadn't been doing before, namely deep sets from my kitchen table, broadcast into the world with no management, nobody to agree with, this suddenly not being in a band, suddenly not having to account to anybody else what I was doing, and doing something creative in a field that I'd not been in before was really liberating and great fun.
My challenge as a musician, it's been actually losing myself and my identity within the bigger collective. Having done my solo project POS and playing what I would consider demos in nightclubs and seeing how people react to the feeling first and the detail second, and sort of refound my own identity, I've realized that I need to be really true to myself and also have the courage to express myself the way I am. If I'm different, it's okay.
Change that to... Oh, it is overlap, that's right.
The interplay between bands and band members, you could see it as a real negative or you could see it as a real positive. All of these are really parts of what it is to be in a band.
Being in a band is a lot of compromise. Some of that creative tension actually adds to the music and adds to the bit between all the characters involved. But it's also drawing on each other's strengths. It creates something that I couldn't personally create individually. What happens in those spaces, it's sometimes painful, it's sometimes uncomfortable, it's sometimes really good fun as well. It's where the darkness and the magic is. It's a, two-pronged thing, I guess.
I know that I couldn't make music as good as the music I'm making with Jono and Paavo with anybody else. If I was a solo artist, it would probably have done me in by now. But when you're together on the road, when you're together in the studio, there's somebody to lean on, somebody to enjoy the highs and survive the lows.
We are a collective of musicians, each with our own vision, our own sound, our own ideas. That in itself can be challenging, but it's also a real gift.
I feel your love all over me.
Once you've actually decided you're going to do an album,
like warm rain, it's heavenly.
Then you start thinking about, well, what track's going to go on there?
And when I've worn myself right down to the bone, I know you'll find me and carry me home. Do you want me to have a little go at the chorus?
Yeah, that's
the first bit of the chorus.
I wanted to go back to what is the DNA of Above and Beyond all about? For me, Tri-State sort of has that, because it was just the three of us. It was our first album. We didn't really know what we were doing, and I wanted to get a bit of that naivety back. Listening back to that album, it was really interesting, actually, because there were full songs on there, but there were also kind of instrumentals and moments, and we wanted this album to have some of that as well.
When Jono and I listened to Tri-State again, I think one of the things that struck me about it was that aside from Alone Tonight, there wasn't anything on the album that was classic Above and Beyond at the time.
So we got a good lead on the chorus. I think you should do some doubles just to thicken it up a bit. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carry me home.
So I think I sensed this sort of sense of musical freedom and this unattachment to what people thought we were. That feels like authentic Above and Beyond to me. We're not actually a particular genre. We have lived and breathed inside the trance world for a long time, but I think we've also lived and breathed outside of it too, and I think that's what we do. It's about the songs and it's about the music and it's about the feeling we create rather than necessarily the form of what we do.
Then I think we should move on to the Lift Me Up section.
You can redo
Is that in tune?
Yeah.
Yeah, you lift me up. Or is it, Yeah, you lift me up.
It's yeah, you lift me up, isn't
That's
it?
it.
It's not
Yeah, you lift me up. Yeah, you lift me up.
That.
Yours, that's different ways.
Put one down. If it's wrong, we'll do it again.
Disneyland.
We're not having that in it.
Yeah, you lift me up. Yeah, you lift me up.
At the start, you've just got to be completely creative. And it's like throwing paint at the wall and you see what sticks. With Above and Beyond, I've always tried to do what I believe in rather than sort of pander to something, some kind of perceived thing that we should be doing. I do have that belief that if you make something you believe in, other people will believe in it too. It has to be that way round.
Having been clubbing quite a bit and really falling in love with dance music overall, I think I've realized that I'm a trance guy at heart. What I really wanted to do is write songs that have that, what I consider my love of trance expressed. The first one that got everybody excited about was Quicksand, because I felt like for me it really represents that melodic trance that I fell in love with in the first place. And then another one that we did with Zoe is called Ride at Dawn, which at this point I don't think anybody's even heard. And it might be even more like that. It was a really fun thing to write trance with Zoe, something that I really wanted to bring to the album. It's really cool to see that I've been able to really fully express my 15-year-old trance power. I think I sent you a version of this, and you were saying, like, would we start with the chorus? And
you'd move the chorus to the front.
Because basically we have on the album Quicksand and Ride at Dawn. This is always, they're kind of like sister tracks. You know?
I remember you saying to me, you couldn't get "Are you ready" out of your head. Are you ready?
Yeah.
But it's not. But it doesn't actually happen at all. It's I am ready. But we've remembered it like.
That's funny.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? I'm ready.
I'll be right there by your side.
See, this is really nice when you get this little breakdown and piano-y bit here, I think.
My favorite bit's the... I love that. And it's cool because it's kind of like, at least represents to me like our kind of old school trance sound.
Yeah.
And it's a real sort of nudge to like where we started.
You are the queen of trance.
Can't change the way the wind blows.
I pray to you.
Thank you.
That's what I'm
and
gonna
keep
do.
looking at me even when I'm like this, okay?
Yeah. Good.
Oh, the brain chair.
Have you got enough reverb?
I'd like some delay too. Do you want to show me that high note you were on about anyway?
Yeah.
I know you're good at writing songs, but like your voice is pretty awesome too. You know? You should be a singer.
For me, it's really important when you think of yourself as being in a band to have bandmates that are there for the long haul. And I think Justine and Zoe, we come from a similar point emotionally. I think there is a willingness to deal with things that aren't traditional dance music, I guess. They're more like folk songs, I think, than dance songs. We talk about what happens on Saturday afternoon when you're on your own, or your girlfriend leaves you, or somebody close to you passes.
Over the years, I really saw, particularly Zoe, Tony, and Justine, write about really personal things in their songs. And initially, I felt like, can you say that? And like, is that okay? But then having seen how well that honesty resonates with people and helps people to really understand it. So for me, given that I don't write that many lyrics, it's been actually also cool to be similarly authentic in the musical expression.
What was it? That was it. That one. Yeah, that one started as a piano thing actually that time, didn't it?
The core sound of Above and Beyond, without Richard Bedford, without Zoe Johnston, without Justine Suissa, would be very difficult to imagine. It's like listening to a U2 record. You know it's U2 because Bono's singing. If you keep changing your collaborators every album you do, I don't know how you manage to cut through, because what's your musical identity? I can't see Above and Beyond without Richard's voice. For me, it's become part of what we do. It's a really easy to love voice. Well, you can pick that up from the other take.
Sometimes when Tony writes a lyric or a song, you just get the feeling, oh, this is going to connect with people.
One more?
Yeah, let's do one.
Okay, let's do more. I'll drop you in from just before when it comes in, so it will sound like this.
I always felt like I was kind of no frills in some ways, but tried to narrate and emote in a way that was relatable. But it's all about the narrative and the emotion and the intent and making people believe the words without the kind of connection. It's not a song, it's just singing. There is a part where it's hard not to stand there and think, how on earth did this happen? How did it get here? Then it just seems, completely otherworldly. How was that song?
I think that went brilliantly. Fantastic.
Really proud of the songwriting. And I think the songwriting, the lyrics, it really is something that is timeless.
The themes that we talk about deal with big human themes like love and loss and sadness and happiness. What is certain is that some of them have moved people greatly, and that is why you join a band in the first place.
Yes, we're a band, and yes, we're a team and a collective, but I think particularly on this album, there was almost a feeling of more freedom for each person to be them.
I think it was Rubén who said the audience should always come second, and that sounds a bit selfish, but I think it's important that as an artist, you express from within.
Put it in place of the...
For a lot of artists, you start out just doing it, and then you get a bit of success, and then you start thinking about it. But actually, you need to get back to that bit where you kind of just make stuff that you're feeling, and that's the special bit about music.
I've learned to trust my own instincts. I tend to write stuff with choruses that sort of go like that. And I think the songs on this album are all like that.
It was quite exciting because I decided I just could feel that my growth as a songwriter more on this album. I wanted to try out a wider range of dynamics and bigger feelings, and I kind of noticed a shift in me with that. But it just feels, we've written so many tracks together for so many years that it just now has a real kind of bedded in power and ease about it. I find that feels like it grows album on album, song on song. What
I feel like I'm trying to bring is this sort of freedom of expression to the creative process. We've had it with, Justine literally, crying, writing Heartland. These are these amazing moments, and the songs normally come from some kind of a really feeling-filled moment. Heartland, like so many songs that I've written with Justine, came out of incredible conversations. We tend to always do all our writing sessions, really catching up with what's been going on in our lives and everything. We were actually in Finland, and it was that week over like -20 Celsius outside. We were feeling all cozy by the fire, playing piano in nature, and somewhere where I felt really safe and happy. It really feels like this song came from that feeling of real grounding and being at home. And Justin is one of the most incredible songwriters that I've ever had the honor to work with. One of the cool things about music is especially for us writing it, these songs are almost like time capsules or like frozen moment in time.
If I'm sitting in the room with Zoe or Justine, I want to know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what the song's about, and that should inform the music, and it should be a collaborative thing.
Hearing the songs that you Tony and Justin were writing, and knowing how personal some of this stuff is, I felt like it takes real, like, bravery. Like, you need to be really brave to do that. And it's been really inspiring to just watch you guys have this ability, like what seems like naturally, whereas for me it's been like, at least at the start, it was kind of like awkward because I wasn't sure if we are really focusing on the joy of it. Then we're probably going somewhere right.
It is often like therapy as well. It always feels very sort of soul nourishing.
All of our best songs of work, they've come from a very personal space, whether it's myself or Zoe or Justine writing them.
I feel your love all over me.
Something that's happened to me is intensely personal and might not relate to anybody else, but it turns out that when you describe it honestly, it does.
And when I've worn myself right down to the bone.
And I think that's been the secret of Above and Beyond's musical success the last 25 years.
I think Tony used to say it was like happy, sad songs, and there's something in that.
Hello, guess who it is? I've got a few people that I love working with. You are one of my top 3 because your chords, I just love your chords, and I find them so inspiring.
I love the way you write, because when I'm playing some chords and stuff, you just spill out all of this stuff, and it's a really organic sort of from the heart process where you've just kind of got all this music in your head, and you don't know. This is how I see it anyway. You don't know what you're going to make of this thing, but you're just spilling out all this stuff, and then it sort of takes shape, and you kind of mold it like a piece of plasticine in something.
I think the beauty of music, though, with what we create, is the fact that we have this ability to be able to transport the listeners into the hearts and souls of our minds, of what we feel with our music. And little did I know when we wrote this song, When You Believe, how poignant it would become for my own life. I humbly say this. I know you're supposed to not say things and say that, but I'm really proud of this song. I want to be in this moment.
There's more broader spectrum of sound. We are also having Justine, Zoe, Malou.
I really like working with people I've worked with for years, and also stirring the pot. And, we've started working with Sam, for example, over the last few years as well. Something I tend to run away from, the sort of idea of the A and B sound, or people talk about the Anjuna sound. And I guess I don't really view music in those terms. I suppose it's more like, how does this track make me feel?
Blood from a Stone was a song I wrote one day at Paavo's house, and he was just playing the piano, and I wrote the song on top, and we didn't really think about what tempo it was, and it turned out to be 160 beats per minute, which of course for our kind of dance music was not so great. From the top.
I never tasted honey so sweet.
When we got to this album cycle, Dave Dresden was our locked-in A&R man, and fell in love with the song. And I said, maybe we put it on the album as a secret track. And he said, the last thing this song needs to be is a secret. Everybody needs to hear it. I always felt that the song was strong, but I didn't know if it would fit into Above and Beyond. And I think we just had this feeling on this record that we could do whatever we want to do. And it's proved to be quite a head turner. Your vocal and the sentiments of the song make it very much Above and Beyond, I think.
Feeling is gone.
Brilliant.
Okay, how was that?
Fucking great.
Rediscovering dance music again, like in the same way that I first fell in love with it. I really understood that for me, dance music is not just about the music, it's about the feeling on the dance floor, it's about the community.
Bigger Than All of Us felt like a great title for the album, because the Above and Beyond community, the Anjuna family, is bigger than us.
When the idea of calling the album Bigger Than All of Us started being talked about, I was instantly thinking that that is exactly what's happening here. That even if I knew that it's going to be difficult, it's worth doing because of this community. I felt responsibility actually even more than towards the band, towards our fans and our community.
The gigs and hopefully the whole Above and Beyond and Juno world is a space where people can sort of be themselves and feel okay to be themselves. What actually really warms my heart is the way that those people treat each other at the gigs and the stories that come out of that. It's a lovely, lovely thing to be part of.
It really is bigger than the three of us. I think Above and Beyond has become, for many people, a source of music and inspiration. That's the magic, that's the aim of writing songs and of doing albums, is making those connections, of providing people with 5 minutes of therapy in a way.
Through the dark times, through the tough times and the tired times, quite frankly, that keeps you going because you see a bigger purpose that's not about you, but it's about all these other people. Coachella was great because it was the first time we played some of the stuff from the album, and particularly bigger than all of us, actually. When we played that, I got that feeling where you know something's special, and particularly in the breakdown, I was like, I don't know if it was just all in my head, but I just felt, oh, this is connecting, this is special, and that got me really excited about that record, actually, and about some of the stuff on the album. I remember it with Alone Tonight, it's the same feeling. There's certain records you put out that you just know, okay, this one's got it.
Well, next is obviously the tour. That is a really incredible thing to experience. I love the feeling like we're almost like a little circus coming to town.
What's next? Well, we're obviously going to be on tour, touring this album. We'll get to see what people think of it then, won't we?
It's a very exciting time to be in the band. We've just done at Coachella probably the biggest show we've done in a long, long time. We've got new fans very excited about us. We've got a tour we're about to do, and we've got this album full of new music that we're very excited to share with people.
It's been quite the undertaking, but it feels really amazing that we can finally share this with people. It's a collection of really, you know, for us, really like old classics and fresh new things.
Albums absolutely take on a life of their own, and I think the way that it's received, the songs that end up being the ones that people love, define the album, and we're not sure what those are yet.
So it must be exciting, right?
Yeah, it's exciting.
We can't control how people react to this, but we're happy with what we made, and I think that's all we can really ask for. So even if it fails now, it's like, well, we tried, and we're happy with what we did.
That's the best feeling about making music, actually. That sense of, I'm really proud of this, you know, this is good, and then whatever else happens can happen, and it's out of your control, but you've made something that you feel is strong, yeah. Hopefully the fans like it. I mean, we'll have to see, won't we?
It's an amazing thing, music.
It's a great record. I think it's got lots of great moments on it, and I'm happy that we approached it with freedom and confidence.
I'll drop it in just before verse 2, yeah?
I think for me it's been a real growth period and a really awesome challenge, and I'm glad that I had the courage to go through with it because I knew that in the end we have an amazing community and they deserve a new Above and Beyond album, and I think it's a really amazing thing that, you know, we have an album coming out 25 years since we met, and I think that's a rare thing.